Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one again based on one of your newer suggestions, and this one following the theme of being chronicled in one of the books known by Pliny the Elder. He's someone, if you followed my YouTube channel for a while now, he's someone that I mentioned in some of my past videos. He has this book called Natural History that chronicles a lot of fascinating cryptids, such as the case here with this set of cryptids, in this case a set of humans that supposedly live somewhere out there in this world. So very fascinating to come across, in this case, yet another entry in Pliny the Elder's book. And it has to do with this. You're looking at them now. Not much known is about them. In fact, it seems like they were chronicled a while back, but then that's it. Nothing else really about them. So they're known in this case as the Astomi people, and that remain as mysterious as they were in this case reported all those years back as they are today. Very, very little info associated with them. But still, let's go ahead and let's chronicle all the information tied to these mouthless Astomi people as they're known. So what were or what are these race of people? Well, apparently they involved a group of people that were in Greek and Roman mythology way back when. In fact, you have to consider the fact that Pliny the Elder, when he was talking about his book, in this case, Natural History, this was about the time again in the very, very early days around 79 AD or so. So, I mean, that's when he died. So, in this case, having him talking about that even before his death, you're looking at least, over 2,000 years. I mean, somewhere around there, 2,000 years or so back then. And in this case, with regards to these people, they either existed during that time period, they existed before it, or even to this very day. Either way, though, they were definitely part of the Greek and Roman mythology. As far as their characteristics, like what they entailed, there's some things that clearly stood out about them, and then I'll tie in as to why those physical characteristics are so important to this race of people. For starters, they're known as the mouthless Astomi people because, quite frankly, they have no mouth. I mean, it's as simple as that. That's the most prominent thing tied to them. They have a complete absence of the mouth, not even a slit in terms of their mouth. Nothing there. It's just completely void. So if you were to take your average human and then just take away their mouth, then you would have, in this case, these Astomi people. Another thing associated with them has to do with this very thin, wispy hair that seems to cover their entire skin or parts of the skin. Nothing really much that stands out, though, no, with regards to that, because even today, obviously, a lot of people will have a lot of hairy, like, skin, or others that will have no hair on their skin at all. Either way, though, in this case, the Astomi people did have this wispy hair, if you could call it that, and they had this hair for a very specific purpose. Again, I'll mention that here in just one moment. But another thing about their characteristics is this: they were known to be very thin and bony, and there's a reason for that too, but far more, in this case, thinner or skinnier than you would expect your average person. So it definitely stood out whenever you saw these creatures, and I'm sorry, these race of people, although some people could consider them creatures, considering essentially how they lived. And then where you would find these particular cryptids is this: you would have to go to a river, in this case known as the Ganges River. It's a very long river that stretches throughout India. In fact, I think it's over 2,000 kilometers or so, 2,500 to be specific. In fact, you'll see it here, like a map of it. So where it's been described, Pliny the Elder himself stated that you would find this race of people, in other words, at the mouth of, this case, the Ganges River. He didn't exactly pinpoint where, though, you would find them, because with over 2,500 kilometers to work with, this quote-unquote mouth of the Ganges River is a long way to try to find the exact point. But somewhere along the way, these things were there, whatever this race of people were, and if they are to this day, they still remain very, very hidden, because considering again how many people are living there in India, the fact that they haven't reported on these Astomi people Even to this day, it kind of definitely stands out. Now, why those physical characteristics are important is because of this. Remember, they had no mouth. So if one is wondering automatically, well, how do they feed themselves? It actually ties in to that wispy hair and also to their nose. So the way the story goes is this: these creatures, these race of people, that hair of theirs could actually catch, in a way, food, or the closest thing to food, from the air itself. So anytime they would travel around other locations, that hair, wherever it was catching the particles, the elements, anything that was floating in the air. And then that way it would convert or be absorbed into their skin and then produce a form of food. Interesting, no? When you think about that, because here you have this hair that's acting, no doubt, as a layer of protection, but also at the same time as something like a form of nutrition, or a form of gathering nutrition for their bodies. But that was just one aspect of the way they fed. The more prominent one has to do with their nose. In some places, people reported that they had a very, very large nose, like abnormally large, like humongous compared to the rest of their face, and in others seem to have a more normal sized nose. Either way, though, they actually used their nose to feed as well. And the way they would do it is they would smell. That smell would somehow turn, in this case, whatever was in the air again into particles of food, and then they would use it as a form of nutrition. Very interesting, the way that that their bodies work, their metabolism worked, how they were able to do all of this, and feed off of scents is quite fascinating to realize. And they would continue to do this. In fact, there was some information I was reading that stated that they would frequently carry with themselves roses, flowers, other items that had a strong, but in this case, beautiful smell. And then that way, whenever they were traveling about, and they were hungry, they would just simply smell whatever they had with them. And then when that happened, they would be able to feed off of it. Interestingly enough, this actually came from the area that they, I guess, permeated. Remember, I was talking about whatever it was, that mouth of the Ganges River. Apparently, whatever was there, and however long it took, it might have taken thousands of years, but either way, there was this thing, this set of plants with quote unquote magical powers that grew there. And so ordinary humans who lived around that area started to then turn or evolve into what's known as these mouthless Astomi people. So whatever these things were that were on the ground, whatever was planted there was causing, in this case, the humans to become slowly over time, probably over several generations, maybe even hundreds, thousands of years, into the Astomi people. So another interesting thing to think about, how, in this case, the area surrounding them influenced the evolution of these people into what they became. So once they became now what's known as the mouthless Astomi people, then they simply continued with those characteristics of feeding off a smell, and then using, in this case, their hair to also feed off of the particles in the air. This is, though, a weakness too at the same time, because apparently the story takes another twist. So they do feed off of strong scents, but that can be a very bad thing too, because if they go into an area where there's a very strong smell, but it's a bad smell, like I would imagine, like let's say a strong set of pollution, or a set of trash, or something else that just has a very, very strong toxic smell, it can overwhelm them so much that they could become very, very sick or outright die from it. And we think about it, it's a lot like food in itself. A lot of good food, a lot of beautiful food, like that smells so good. It's great to eat. But conversely, if you smell like very bad food, rotten food, and you eat it, then you become sick, and in some cases even die from it as well. So very same concept, but imagine it again involving the actual smell itself. Good smell equals good food for, in this case, the Astomi people. Bad smell, well, that equals them becoming sick or just dying afterward. But because of their very, in this case, of this weakness, that's why it ties into them being very secluded, because they cannot live among ordinary people. Obviously, they would stand out, and there would be some issues with a lot of people like probably not wanting to have these Astomi people around, but more it's tied to this the strong smells from any city, which does stand out. Like when I was in New York City last year, the first thing that hit me was the smell of the city when I got out of the taxi cab there. I mean, it's probably to everyone that's there that lives there, it's just another day. But for me, being an outsider and being there, there was a very very strong smell from the city. So such is the case here with these Estomi people. Anytime if they were to travel to a city, whatever the smell is there, it would just hit them so hard that it would just overwhelm them. That's why they have to remain secluded. That's why they prefer rural areas, and that's why they remain to this day very rare to see, if anything, like if anybody has actually ever seen them. Another interesting thing, one last thing to note with regards to these cryptids, the Astomi people, is this. Because, and this could be tied in again to the way that they feed, because of the fact that it's so easy for them to just essentially live, because they don't have to, let's say, work necessarily too much for their food, hunt in other words, or try to do anything associated with commerce, like money, anything like that. All they have to do is just smell around, and they basically live as is. It's created a passive and easygoing stance with them, which kind of makes sense too when you think about it. Here you have these race of people that don't have to do much effort to live, so because of it, they can just be considered just easygoing far more than anyone else out there. And so that way, wherever they are to this day, whether they're still by that river or somewhere else in India or even somewhere else in this world, if you find them, you will come across people that will be completely passive to you. They won't have to have anything or any fear of them having bad interactions, being mad, angry, anything like that towards you as well. So, but what do you guys think as far as this race of creatures, these mythological, in this case, people that were apparently from the Greek and the Roman days, and who knows, are still out there in that area? There, these Astomi people. Quite fascinating. A lot of things to consider, especially the way that they eat. And I found this too. If you're wondering, like, well, how can people just survive without eating? In a loose way, you can use this as a comparison. You're looking at this here, beautiful, beautiful cat. It's known as the sand cat. It also lives around those same areas in the desert around Asia, Africa, other places. So this sand cat can live without water, not for too long. It's not like it's going to live its lifetime without water, but it can survive weeks or even months without water because of its environment. And the way it does it is it basically eats whatever its prey is and absorbs the water from the prey itself. So the blood, whatever else, since obviously like animals and us, we have most of our bodies consisting of water. So these animals, in this case, these cats, they're able to just eat and then at the same time drink in a way from the water from the bodies of their prey. Quite fascinating when I was reading that info to think that they could survive weeks, if not months, without direct water. So in a way, such as these Astomi people can do so. Another comparison is there's obviously creatures in the deep, deep part of the ocean that have never seen the light of day. Like in that case, they feed off of whatever is their surrounding area, and they use, just like the Asomi people, feelers, everything else to try to survive. And then you have jellyfish as well that have no mouths, for so to speak. They have nothing in terms of eyes, let alone ears, and yet they're able to, in this case, survive. They simply just swim around whatever is caught within their long tentacles, their poisonous tentacles, then they're able to just catch them and then feed off of that. Quite fascinating. I mean, if you're wondering how these are so many people are able to survive, there's a lot of real world applications that can be placed on this too. So, but yes, if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed with regards to these mysterious race of people, please post those comments below. Unfortunately, not too much in more recent days in terms of these Astomi people, but if somebody has something that's far more recent as an example, then please, it'd be great to share with everyone here. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.